So on that note, welcome to the Pandemic Pinup Happy Hour. If you are tuning in without any context, today's theme is sweater weather, which just means I'm making hot cocktails in case you're kind of chilly. Because I know the weather's getting cold in other parts of the country. It is getting relatively cold in Texas, but it can't make up its mind. So yesterday it was 84 degrees. Tonight it's going to be 30 degrees. So it's kind of all over the place here. So I like to keep my house at about 68 degrees. So it's nice and cozy if I wear sweatpants and if I drink hot beverages. So for sweater weather, we have 3 cocktails per usual. We have a boozy hot chocolate. We have a wassail. And we have a mulled wine. Not to be confused with mold wine. Mold as in Mulled. I had a very confusing conversation with some people earlier this week who were just very distressed, thinking I was making a cocktail that involved mold and wine. So fear not, we will not be doing any of that today. But all of these recipes are very simple. Like most of the recipes that I put out there, most, not all. The idea is for them to be very flexible with you adding or subtracting flavors. If you have a different palate, you like things sweeter or more tart. Also, these are the spirits I'm going to be using today are kind of just suggestions. I'll go over some substitutions that you could use, but I would rather you not look at them as substitutions, just kind of view them as suggestions and like alternatives, if you will. I know that's kind of synonymous, but these cocktails today really do go with pretty much any spirit you like. There's a few that like probably I wouldn't drink it with like mezcal, but mezcal drinkers would really like this cocktail as mezcal. But it is an easy swap out if you just have a general group at home and you're not really sure what everyone drinks and you're like, oh, I could do bourbon, I could do vodka, I could do gin. All of like the more household name spirits would work. But yeah, if you want to get crazy with it, by all means, please do. And then let me know about it because I love hearing about people making my cocktails. Shouts out to Algie and Woody for participating in the Dysfunctional Family Bingo giveaway. I have some super awesome Dysfunctional Family Bingo cards headed your way so we can laugh at how terrible the holidays can sometimes be or drink about it while we do. So for today, I thought we would start with, I guess we could start with like the easier one, which would be the cocktail I'm calling Awaken the Trees. And this is the wassail cocktail. So wassail and cider are similar enough to where it almost doesn't really matter which one you're using. But if you're making them from scratch, they're a little different. They're both apple-based. They both have spices. But from there, it kind of varies. Apple cider tends to be a little bit sweeter. Wassail tends to have more bitter notes to it. They use a lot of peels from citrus fruits. But wassail comes from Wasshel, which is kind of like a greeting, a seasonal greeting in, I believe, German. But they would go wassailing, which is similar to caroling, but they would sing to trees, not people. So when you go a wassailing, you sing to the trees and it awakens the trees, and these trees give you like seasonal fruits and like maple syrup and all kinds of crazy stuff. So people will go sing to trees and then make some alcohol and forget that they were acting like crazy people in a forest and drink it. And I think it's kind of magical to think of it that way. So if you would like to make some wassail and sing to trees, please do. If not, you can just drink it at home watching a movie. There was a wassail recipe with the flyer that I put out for this week's class. I'm going to tell you what I put in it. I'm not going to make it on camera today just because it does take about 40 minutes to 2 hours, depending on your method. But it had apple cider, as in the alcoholic version. It had sherry, and I used an Amontillado. And it had a red ale, as in beer, and I used an Irish red ale. So if you want to know exactly what I used Lustau's Amontillado sherry. I used a Texas-based cider called Austin East Ciders, and I used their just regular like flagship cider. And then I used Killian's red ale. And so all of that alcohol was combined with oven roasted apples that had a tiny bit of brown sugar on them, and then some spices, some orange peels, all that kind of good stuff. And I like to just put mine in a crock pot so I can like set it and forget it. But you can definitely do it in a pot if you don't have a crock pot or a slow cooker. So if you missed that flyer and want the specs, please reach out. I'll be more than happy to send it to you. But once you have it, you strain it. And I just have mine in an old whiskey bottle that I haven't taken the labels off of yet. But it's just kind of like a murky looking, darker brown liquid. And it's murky more so because I didn't really want to strain it as much. I kind of like the density of it having like all the bits and pieces in there from the apple. So I kind of mushed them through the strainer just a tad. Word of advice if you are making wassail, and then we'll make this drink because I've been talking for a long time. All apples are not created equally. I know most people are familiar with your standard apples like the Granny Smith, which is tart and firm. And then you have the Red Delicious, which has kind of like a mealy, kind of mushy sweetness to it. You can use any apple. Pick an apple that you like. The flavor, the texture's not going to matter once it's cooked. But if you steer towards ones that have a little bit more acidity, that flavor profile will be a lot brighter in the wassail because you have all these other deep flavors we're putting in there. So to make this cocktail, we're going to get a little pot. As you can see, I have no shakers today. It is all stovetop. So I have a pot that I'm going to put on here. And with the wassail being cooked, some of that alcohol that's in there cooks off, obviously from the sherry and the cider and the beer. Plus those are lower proof spirits. I wouldn't say they're entirely cooked off though. So I wouldn't necessarily serve this to maybe children. I'd have to do some math to see exactly what the percentage of alcohol that is left in there is. If that's something you need to know, I can do that. But what we're going to do is we're going to take 4 ounces of this really tasty wassail. And I'm going to put it directly in this pot on low. I might put it on low to medium. Because right now, we're just kind of heating this up. We're not doing anything super crazy to it. And this is a build-in glass style cocktail, if you will. That means you don't have to put this in a separate vessel before putting it into your cup. So with this wassail, I really like the combination of bourbon and apricot brandy. I'm a big whiskey fan, and apricot is one of my absolute all-time flavors, but it would be really good with all kinds of stuff. It holds up really nicely to darker spirits. So an aged rum would be really nice. An aged tequila would be delicious. You could do other kinds of brandy. There's a lot of fruit brandy. So you could even do like a Calvados, which is an apple. They have pear. All of those things will do well. It'll do well with vodka and gin. They just are going to have to compete a little more because they tend to be a little bit like either lighter or brighter in flavors as opposed to like rich and deep. So I like it rich and deep. So that's what we're doing. So I'm going to heat this wassail. And when you're heating something that's already been cooked like this, I'm just waiting for some steam to come off. You don't want it so hot you can't drink it. But the other ingredients that we're putting in there are room temperature. So they will lower that temperature a little bit. So for this cocktail, I have my little Irish coffee mug. And directly in my glass, I am going to put the recipe that I made says an ounce. But Chandler's had a rough day, so we're doing an ounce and a quarter to an ounce and a half-ish. But start with an ounce, see how you like it. I already know I like this with a little bit more kick, so I'm going to do an ounce and a half. But an ounce is good just because we're also adding brandy, so that's an additional alcohol content. And I love this Luxardo brandy. It is just like probably one of my favorites. I can't get over it. It's so tasty. Although I do have yet to try the Rothman and Rothman and Orchard apricot. I've heard that one is amazing. So, ½ ounce of your apricot brandy. And if you're really into fruit brandies, you could just do fruit brandy, no bourbon. That would work perfectly as well. So, we've got our bourbon and our apricot brandy. You could put this in here and heat it together. I'm trying to conserve all of my alcohol content, so I'm not going to do that. And this will be warm enough to heat the whole cocktail. And I find that when I do it this way, it's at perfect drinking temperature most of the time once the person gets the drink. Let's talk about garnishes though. This is super simple. As you can see, our booze, our mixer, and then I'm literally going to pour this in here. I'm just waiting for it to finish heating. But traditional apple cider or wassail garnishes are cinnamon sticks, apple slices. You can do orange peels. Really do whatever makes you happy. It is literally anybody's ball game. I like to add things that add aroma, so I'm a big fan of cinnamon sticks and orange peel. The apples look really pretty, but they do oxidize and turn brown if they're sitting out for a while. But they also provide a snack. So, you know, win-win, kind of. It's just kind of up to you. So I see some steam coming off. It's a good time for the bar cam, even though this isn't like super exciting bar cam footage. But we're going to test it out just to make sure I still remember how to juggle technology. Replace spotlight. That's a new option. All right. No, I don't want to join audio. And no, I don't want my face. I want the other side of this camera. All right, guys. I've got my steam. Yes, you can see the steam. Yay. Oh my gosh, how exciting. Okay, so that tells me it's warm enough. And that's the end of that bar cam. Really not that crazy. So as you can see, I just heated it. And now I'm going to pour it directly over this drink. And now, if you don't even want to make your own apple cider or wassail, you could totally just buy apple cider and then use these ratios. This is a good starting place. Just use these ratios. This is why I wanted to start with this. Very simple. You can go all out, make your own. You can just buy some and then follow these ratios to see how you feel about it. All good stuff. And then I'm just going to put a cinnamon stick because I'm kind of simple right now. Yeah, very simple. The glass makes it look super pretty, like I'm at a ski resort, or I have more money than I actually do. But that is Awaken the Trees. And for the record, the wassail recipe that I did include in the flyer is very much based in the roots of that traditional recipe. Most of those flavor profiles that I added in there are all from like an actual old school traditional wassail. So nothing crazy exciting, but it gets better, I promise. Let's move on to what I am calling Mull It Over, because I really like puns. This is a mulled wine. There are lots of cultures that make mulled wine. I want to say like Germany and Austria are super famous for it because they do a Glühwein wine, or however you pronounce it. You like say glue and then you cough and then you say wine, and that's what it sounds like. But basically mulled wine is just wine that's been steeping with ingredients, and it kind of infuses the wine and then it tastes really tasty and you drink it hot. The closest flavor profile I can tell you, if you've never had it before, is it's kind of like drinking a hot sangria. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but trust me, it's super tasty. So this is going to be a non-traditional mulled wine. I'm not using like a regular red wine or even doing a white wine. We're going to do like some port and some bourbon and all kinds of cool stuff. So we are going to put our pot, second pot, on the stove. And now we're going to measure out all these super cool ingredients that we're going to put in there. So I have this port. This is a tawny port. There's tawny and ruby are the two most common types of port. I like them both. They're both interchangeable for most purposes. So use whatever you can find, really, or just any old port at the store. If it just says port, will also do the trick. So 2 ounces of port wine directly into the pot. And then, like I said, I'm a whiskey fan. So we're doing 3 ounces of bourbon. You might be able to argue that this is more of a mulled bourbon than a mulled wine. I won't argue back, but I will silently hate you if you do that. Got that in there. And then I have tart cherry juice. It's, I guess, quite common to find in other states. Sometimes it's a little hard to find out here. If you can't find tart cherry juice, you could do like 2 parts cherry juice and 1 part lemon or lime. But tart cherry juice has like a really nice sharp flavor profile that I really like. So we're going to add 3 ounces of that. And it plays really, really, really well with the port. All right, so that is most of our liquid. The only other thing we have to add really is a little bit of simple syrup. And this is just kind of like adding salt to a steak. It kind of ties everything together. And equally very adjustable. You could use a honey syrup, an agave syrup. You could use less than I'm going to put in there. But I find that it rounds out that alcohol just because when you heat alcohol, it tastes way more alcoholic, but not necessarily in a pleasant way. So adding a little bit of sugar kind of helps that out. So we're going to use an ounce of simple syrup. Perfect. So while that is on there, heating up, I'm going to teach y'all my favorite little mulled wine trick. Traditionally, mulled wine would be in a big pot like this. Sometimes they even put like these sugar things on top that they like slowly heat and melt into the wine, which is kind of cool. But I don't have that kind of space at home. And I like to be kind of innovative. And I know that's not how you say that word. I always say it incorrectly because I'm thinking about it in two languages. Not exactly interchangeable. Oh, the ports. Yes, true. Not exactly interchangeable. They're not identical. I wouldn't say they're as far apart as like almond milk and milk. Can I use juicy juice and lemon instead of fancy cherry juice and simple? You can try it. I'm not against that. I just thought this sounded really good, so I went with this and it worked. So then I was not inclined to try anything else. But I'm here for this juicy juice and lemon idea. Let's do it. Or, swap it out. Let's be crazy. Let's use like Hawaiian Punch or Capri Sun at this point. There are no rules anymore. We can do whatever we want. But my nifty little trick is my French press is going to be my vessel for my mulled wine. Because I like mulled wine, but I don't like the fact that you don't drink it through a straw because you got hot liquid. Not a good idea. And then you have all these little floating things in it that kind of like you have to like pick out of your mouth all the time. So putting it in my French press is going to allow it to steep, and then I can just press it all out like you do with coffee without having to have a ton of additional tools. So I have my really sleek looking French press. Yes, I drink coffee and I love it, maybe a little too much. But in my French press, I'm going to add my dry ingredients. Now bear with me, I got a little wild, but it's really tasty. So I have bay leaf. I don't think bay leaf gets used enough. If you can get fresh, use fresh, but dry works too. So I'm going to put in 2 bay leaves. And then I have something called cider spices or cider spice. I believe I bought this one at Whole Foods, maybe. I don't really remember. But there's a lot of different recipes out there. You can find them online. Doesn't really matter what brand you use. You can also make your own. This one has allspice, it has some clove, it has some dried apple bits, some dried orange peel, some cinnamon bark. It's just kind of like all of the baking spices with some dried additionals like the orange and the apple. So it's really nice. I'm actually going to use quite a hefty amount, but that's just because it's adding some depth, adding some other like notes of flavor in there, but it's not going to steep so long that it takes over. But I need to put enough so that it's noticeable. So I am using 3 tablespoons. I'm going to put this in one. It's a lot harder, this tiny little bowl with this tablespoon than I thought it was going to be. Like one finger and get in your spoon, spices. All right, 3 tablespoons. And then I'm going to put a hefty orange slice also right in there. So just to recap, the pot has port, bourbon, cherry juice, and the simple syrup. And then the French press has bay leaf and cider spices and the orange slice. And then right in here in my French press, I'm going to add 2 drops of orange bitters. 1, 2. And now that my wine is all steamy, turn that down. I'm going to pour that just directly in there. Right in there. And put my little press on top. Now, if you've never used the French press, they're quite simple. This would be the same way to make coffee. You put your grounds and your water in, and then depending on what you're brewing or steeping, you would let it sit for however long. Sometimes it's 2 minutes, sometimes it's 4. Kind of depends on what you're making. And then you just press on the plunger. So I like to make sure the plunger is kind of like touching the ingredients, and you can kind of feel it all of a sudden have a little resistance, just so there's a little less airflow going through it, and that's going to sit there for a couple minutes. I did this multiple times. With this particular recipe, I really enjoyed about a 4-minute steep. That's actually also how I enjoy most of my coffee, in a French press. But it'll maybe vary for you depending on what flavors you're trying to pull out, what wine you're using. You can use a French press for so many things. They are so versatile. I very highly recommend you get one. Most people think, oh, French press coffee, but loose leaf teas are fantastic in a French press. Obviously, mulled wine works. And one of my favorite, but very uncommon use for French presses, mainly because of the cleanup, is to do infused oils because they have a really fine mesh strainer attached to the little plunger. So you put your like warm oil in there with like your roasted garlic or your herbs, and it just strains it to perfection and then just pours out of this little spout. So it's very easy to manage. Just the strainer itself has to kind of sit in that soapy water for a little bit to make sure you get all of that oil residue out of your strainer. So we're gonna let that steep over here to the side. And I'm gonna turn my heat down just a little before we move on to the boozy hot chocolate. So while we're waiting for that, I'm gonna try and keep an eye on the clock. This boozy hot chocolate was very serendipitous. I was just kind of in the mood for a boozy hot chocolate, and I've tried a bunch of different flavors before. And then I thought of the classes we've done in the past where it's the whole back bar idea or back shelf idea where you have these bottles that you buy, you play around with them, and they're not as much of an everyday drinking type of spirit. So they just kind of sit there and collect dust. We've done the blue curacao class, we did the galliano class, and I think we've done one other one that I'm kind of blanking on right now. Maybe we've only done two. But the galliano from the class was kind of sitting there. And I was like, oh, that like herbal, it's got some minty notes. It's got that sweet vanilla to it too. I was like, that might be kind of good in hot chocolate. And it was. It wasn't just good. It was, oh, so good. It was amazing. Like really, really good. Now, having said that, galliano is not the spirit for everyone. My ratios in this recipe are extremely high, but that is because of my ingredient selection. So we'll go over that, how to kind of play with it. If you're not really brave enough to go all in on the galliano, I'll talk to you about reducing some of those measurements. I know a lot of times I do cocktails on here and I get a lot of responses like, wow, that is super interesting. I don't think I would ever try that unless you made it for me. And then if I liked it, I would make it. So I understand that. I really do. But you guys can trust me. We've been doing this for a while. You guys can trust me. You can make something and it'll at least give you a starting point. If you don't love the way I prepared it, then take it and play with it. But you can't play with it if you don't actually try making it. So I want to say this has only been on probably about 2 minutes. So I'm going to put this over here so don't forget about it. I'll put this on my stove. I have it on like super low. So when it comes to this recipe, I am for the hot chocolate, I'm calling it cashmere and chocolate because it's really nice and creamy, but like comforting, like a cashmere sweater, not like a wool sweater where it's like a little itchy and you want to get over it, like over wearing it or get through it. So it's called cashmere and chocolate. Also because I couldn't think of anything clever to name this cocktail other than boozy hot chocolate. So that's the name of the cocktail, guys. If y'all think of something better, tell me what it is and I'll change the name probably. So we will be using baking chocolate. We are not using a chocolate bar. They are not the same. They melt differently. Also, not all baking chocolate is created equal, just like all chocolate bars are not created equal. You have milk, dark, white chocolate, and then when you get into the baking world, there's all these like minute differences, and you have bittersweet, semi-sweet. Mostly what you want to remember is percentage. The higher the percentage number on your baking chocolate bar, the darker it is. I love dark chocolate. Love it. But I didn't want to add a whole bunch of sugar to my hot chocolate recipe. So I wanted to pick a chocolate that was kind of like dark, but not so dark that I had to fix it with sugar because there's already chocolates that have it. And then it would melt better. So I went with a bittersweet chocolate. It was 66%. Fairly certain that the brand I bought this week was Baker's, very popular baking chocolate brand. And it really also comes in these really nifty little like squares, right? Let's see if I can get y'all close up to the camera so you can see the details. But, okay, you can kind of see. So there's a little person on this one. And, oh, they're perfect. 1/4 ounce. So each one of these is a 1/4 ounce, making these a 1/2 ounce and so forth. So if you don't have a scale like I do, it's really easy because the recipe requires 2 ounces. So you'll just break off enough little squares until it adds up to 2 ounces. So before we do that, let's press on this wine. We've molded over. Chandler is filled a bunch of airspace, and we're literally just gonna plunge the wine. So very, very simple to make. Heat, pour, press, serve. So I have these cute little coffee cup. I will say the mulled wine kind of hits you a little different. It's kind of, it's boozy. It's very alcohol forward, and it being warm, I feel like it comes across better in smaller, like digestible amounts. So the cider, it has like all of that apple on top to where, or the wassail, sorry. The wassail has that apple first, alcohol second. The mulled wine is like alcohol first, flavor second. So smaller cups is at least my personal suggestion. So I have this tiny little cup here, but I'm going to prepare my garnish first. I'm going to take an additional little bay leaf and an orange slice. And I'm going to skewer them together because it's such a pretty little combination of colors. Just that green and that orange. I'm going to show you guys the small wine. So let's see. Hold it up so you guys can see it being poured. Yeah, it's very simple. It just pours out. There's no debris. None of that spice came through the little sifter or the little strainer. It literally just looks like a hot glass of wine, but it's so much more complex. And I have my little garnish over here that is very poorly skewered because this glass is also really, really small. But guys, that is what mulled wine looks like. That way you guys don't have any weird like questions. But yeah, it literally looks like a cup of wine, but it's so tasty. It smells really good. You can smell the spice, the citrus. You can smell the wine, the cherry. The bourbon actually is like the very bottom note. But that's also probably my selection of bourbon. You can make this with rye. You can make it with tequila. You can put gin in there. You can get crazy. I'm just a whiskey fan, especially when it gets cold. But yeah, let me drink this. It's good. It's boozy, but it's good. It's like you want more abuse. You want to go back for more. And then you stay there. And that's where your night ends. Oh my gosh, it's so good. It makes me wish very loosely that it snowed in Texas. I hope my words don't come true. I don't need snow in Texas right now. It'd be a little much for me emotionally. But moving on to the hot chocolate. We have Mull It Over, and we have Awakened the Trees. And now we're going to get comfy and cozy with some Cashmere Chocolate. So what we'll be using for this cocktail is heavy whipping cream. That is my choice. I like it. It makes it a little bit silkier, a little bit creamier. You can absolutely use half and half. You can use milk, whole, skim, whatever have you. You could also use any alternative dairy product of your choice, right? You could use almond milk, coconut milk. It will work with all of them, as long as you keep the ratios the same. The texture will be different, and if you choose any of like the plant-based milks, then the flavor profile is going to change. I wouldn't say drastically, but enough to where it won't taste exactly the same. With the other milks, if they are actually dairy, say like half and half or skim milk, it's just not going to be as creamy or as rich because you're getting rid of all the fat that is in heavy cream. So this is a really, really big hot chocolate recipe. I like hot chocolate, and once I serve it, I don't want to get up anymore. So I was going to go ahead and make a one and done. Very easily can be split, but I have no self-control, so this is a recipe just for me. But I would highly recommend, based on its alcohol content, to share it, just, for purposes of no one later telling me I didn't warn anybody. So we are going to use 6 ounces of heavy cream. This is like a 10-ounce cocktail, just so you guys already are prepared to see this. So 6 ounces, that's 2, 4, and 6. And if you think you'll be making a lot of these for some reason, because they're in a kitchen, if you would like me to convert these to cups and tablespoons for you to make it easier, we can totally do that. So I'm gonna put that over here on low. Low is key. So I have only my cream, and then I have my 2 ounces of dark chocolate, in this case, 66% bittersweet. You can chop this, you can grate it. If you can't find baking chocolate, but you can find bittersweet chocolate chips that are of the same kind of percentage or whatever percentage you like. You can use those as well. And then like that chopping is done for you. I'm just really lazy. I break it up in these little squares and that's good enough for me. Takes a little bit longer to melt, but it's nothing like insane. So I'm not making a ton of it. So again, this is just for me. So I have my baking chocolate in there. This is what's going to take just a little bit. This should look fun on the bar can. So we'll pull it up here in a minute. Let's talk about substitutions for the chocolate while we're at it. So you can use any chocolate you like, white chocolate, dark chocolate, milk chocolate. The reason I don't recommend using like a candy bar of chocolate is because it's kind of harder to have an exact understanding of what their sweetness level is because it's not meant to be cooked with. It's already ready to consume. So milk chocolate just means milk chocolate, but that varies so vastly from brand to brand. Like the amount of sugar that they use, the amount of like cocoa fat that goes into there. Same with dark chocolate. There are some brands out there like Lindt, for example, Lindt. They put percentages on their candy bars, and that is kind of helpful, but they don't act the same. So if you don't have baking chocolate in a pinch, candy bar, probably. If we're talking like a strict candy bar, don't make this with like a Snickers or I don't know. Maybe that would be like the most delectable hot chocolate ever. But then you also have all those extra bits in your hot cocoa. You can also use just cocoa powder, like Dutch processed cocoa or just cocoa powder, not hot cocoa powder, like cocoa that you cook with, like cacao powder. Milky Way. Oh, I love Milky Ways. I love the dark chocolate Milky Ways. Those are so good. If you use that though, because it is strictly like dark chocolate, dried out, made into a powder, very obviously that's not the exact process, but that's loosely what it is. You'd have to add sugar. So again, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to make this as easy as possible with a really smooth texture without worrying about burning one ingredient or something not incorporating properly. So this is my easy go-to. I think they also sell so there's chocolate chips, like the ones we use in cookies. And then there's like chocolate flakes, I think. I don't know what the actual term for it is. Algie, if you know it, put it in the chat. But they look like little coins of chocolate. And I've seen them sold at like in the baking section of Walmart. And I think even Hobby Lobby has them. But they're just little tiny coins or droplets of chocolate, but they're not shaped like chocolate chips. Those also work. Those are also meant for actual pastry. So also a solid choice. Couverture. It's been so long since I've had to say that word in out loud of my head in an actual volume outside of my brain. But not coating chocolate. Very good point. See, she's writing this word couverture, and in my brain, all I can think of is how to say it in Spanish, which is cobertura. So we're going to go with that because I know I'm pronouncing that one correctly. But yes, not coating chocolate. Totally different product. If you ever want to learn more about chocolate, I happen to know a very, really, really awesome baker that made some wine and brownies combined into wine brownies or wine blondies, right? It was wine blondies this today, and I intend to make those. But she is the pastry chef master. That is not my wheelhouse. If it's good, I'm here for it. That's about it. Oh, whinies. Oh, I love that. Whinies. So like wine, blondie, brownies, but we're calling them whinies. I am so here for it. I love plays on words, guys. They make me so happy. So as we're getting into this, waiting for this to kind of do its thing, let's see. Bring up that bar cam and check the Facebook just to make sure I'm not missing what I'm supposed to be paying attention to. Start video. And let's replace this spotlight. So if you are not comfortable cooking chocolate, then start low and slow, because especially we have like a high fat dairy product and chocolate. Both of those are temperature sensitive and can very quickly acquire textures that we don't want and cannot fix. So low and slow is the way to go, unless you've done this a couple times and you kind of know. So I have it on like super low, right? So this has, I think, like 1 to 11. That's a very weird number. But yes, I have it on 1 right now. So it'll start kind of getting in there, falling apart. Focus. You can tell my phone's really old. Sorry, guys. Yeah, I like to whisk it. You can use a wooden spoon. I prefer a whisk because if you've ever used them often, they give you a better sense of what is going on in your pot. So if you cook a lot, bake a lot, one of my favorite things to tell people, and this sounds insane, is think of your cooking utensil, your spatula, your whisk, your wooden spoon, as an extension of your hand, right? So you want to pick a utensil that allows you to communicate with your recipe or your item of choice. And I know that sounds like I'm incredibly crazy and like cuckoo culinary, but it's a real thing because when you have a whisk, it's shaped a certain way that it can hit a lot of points at the same time. And so you can sense a lot more resistance if something's sticking. You'll like have more surface area that you can cover than with just like a wooden spoon. So like this is only going to feel what's touching here, or if I'm running it against the side of the pot, then like here. But the whisk is like going like this with your hand. Think of how many more things you could feel if you had your claw hand in your hot chocolate pot. But that's not safe. So we're using a whisk. So let the whisk be your hand. Be the whisk, guys. Be the whisk. I didn't think a lot of explaining these cocktails through, as you can tell, because they're a little bit different than what we usually do. So I'm not going to apologize for the weirdness. And I'm hoping y'all are just here for it because just kind of improving. We'll see how it works. But let's talk about the other ingredients. So in the recipe that I sent out, I'm pretty certain I put vanilla, as in vanilla bean, and cinnamon, which is cinnamon stick or powdered cinnamon. Those are optional. Personally, for me, I feel like they kind of just get lost with the galliano. But if you chose a different spirit, it might be something that you would want to add. You could also use vanilla extract. But those are just kind of like, how do you like your hot chocolate? You know, do you like it with a little touch of cinnamon, like a Mexican hot chocolate, and then maybe you do tequila instead of the galliano? Maybe you like a sweeter type of milk hot chocolate or even a white hot chocolate, in which case vanilla would be really nice. Even when vanilla isn't overly sweetened, our brains associate vanilla with sweet. So sometimes it's a little trick. You add vanilla and someone's like, ooh, this is sweet. And you're like, it's just got vanilla in it. Vanilla is just vanilla. It is a sweet, but it's that aroma. It's not like this, oh, vanilla candy flavor. It's just a sweet thing, and we associate it with things being sweet. So when we taste it, we automatically think, oh, this is sweeter than it probably actually is. So you could do that. You can also do things like, with the amount of extracts out there, you could do coconut, walnut. I know there's lemon, orange. You can infuse this with anything that you like as well. Maybe you like orange peel. If you like a touch of citrus. And then as far as spirits go, I'm using galliano, as I've said a ton of times. But if you're really into like the flavors of anise, like a sambuca style liqueur would be really nice, because you get that really nice kind of licorice note to it. And then you could use things that amplify that. If you're really into gin, juniper and chocolate is actually a really nice pairing. And then you could throw some juniper berries in there to even infuse that cream a little more. So let's switch back to this bar can, guys. It's starting to look all melty and delicious. I'm so excited to drink this and share this with you guys. I hope to see like tons of versions of boozy hot chocolate as we get closer to the holidays. But check that out. The chocolate is melting in there. You see how that whisk is covering all of that surface area? So when you do use a whisk, I've noticed a lot of people like to just kind of do this. Don't do that. There's all that other space that you haven't probed, so you don't know what's going on. Make sure you're scraping your sides. See, look at that. There's a big old pocket of chocolate right there. I would have known that if I was just doing this, guys. Be the whisk. I should be using my other hand to hold my pot, but oh well, technology, man. All right, so we're getting kind of creamy and chocolatey in there. It looks a lot paler based on the light, it seems, than it actually is. It's actually kind of a lot chocolatier in person than it looks on screen, just so y'all know. So what we're going to do now that we've melted the chocolate into the cream is we're going to add all of the other good stuff. So we're going to add 3 ounces of galliano and 1 ounce of brandy. Very, very simple stuff. So we're going to do 3 ounces of galliano. If you also really want to get super high speed with this, you could even make boozy marshmallows. That's kind of one of my things I like to do in the holidays. And herbal liqueurs really hold up well to marshmallow flavors because they're already like kind of designed to be on this, like to pair with sweet because they're usually a liqueur. And then when you add it into that like marshmallow pillowy texture, it's just so good. Then we're using 1 ounce of brandy. Now, if you wanted to swap this around, say you're not brave enough to try all that galliano, then do 3 ounces of brandy, 1 of galliano. Let galliano be your modifier. I did try this with only galliano, and I thought it was a little much, like it wasn't balanced. So now that that's in there, I'm just whisking. I'll bring back the bar can so you guys can see. I'm going to just give it a minute to heat all the way through, make sure all of it's really emulsified. But I thought the brandy was a really good modifier. I also tried it with I also tried it with gin. I tried it with bourbon. I tried it with, I think I tried it with a silver funky rum. Well, not a silver, but like an agricole rum. And brandy was just my favorite out of the ones that I did choose to test. So there's probably other combinations that work really, really well, but this was just my favorite. So this is what I'm bringing to you guys. Yeah, look at that. So pretty. So tasty. Oh my gosh. I'm seeing it on like 2 screens and just my fat kid inside is wiling out right now. But very simple. What I do like to do, let's see if I can juggle this with technology and everything. I do kind of like to tilt the pot back and forth just a little so I can like just kind of give a visual check to the bottom of my pot. Make sure there's, no little pieces that I've missed stirring in. There's a density issue. Yeah, it smells so freaking good in here. But guys, that is the end of the bar cam. I think it's pretty straightforward. If you guys have any questions or your texture seems off, just let me know. And now that's literally all I'm doing for this particular recipe. And then we're going to garnish it. So as far as garnishes, we all know hot chocolate is a very personal thing. Some people like it with whipped cream. Some people like it with chocolate syrup or marshmallows. Some people like it just with nothing. I like it all. I'm not a fan of the chocolate syrup on my hot cocoa, though. It feels like it's just, why? Why are we doing that? I'm not eating a sundae. I feel like that's the place for that. But I do like mini marshmallows, and I do like whipped cream. So when you'll see the picture, it's going to have both. But for now, we're just doing marshmallows. So I have this super nifty clear coffee mug. I'm going to pour this into just like that. Like no extra anything. Just fill that sucker up. Oh my gosh. Hard to share with anybody. And then I'm going to put some marshmallows on here and try not to create the mistake that I made last time where I put too many marshmallows and it started overflowing because I am a child with no self-control. So got some hot little cocoa there with some mini marshmallows. And then because I'm trying to make it festive, even though it's not Christmas, I just want to put out a PSA that I think green peppermints do not get enough attention. The red ones are okay. The green ones are better. I said it. I know what I said, and I stand by it. So I took a little green peppermint, and I crushed it up. And I'm going to use that as part of my cocktail garnish. Because the galliano does have those, like, anise, minty notes to it. And this just makes it look so pretty and festive. I don't put a ton on there because it will kind of sip to the bottom as I'm drinking it. I don't like crunchy. I don't like snacks in my hot chocolate, guys. That's like the weird thing. I like it with almost every other cocktail, but not my hot chocolate. So, are y'all ready to see this masterpiece of cashmere and chocolate? It looks like an ordinary hot chocolate, but it will put you on your behind if you're not careful. There are 4 ounces of alcohol in this and a lot of unhealthy things, but sometimes you just do something unhealthy. Ooh, a little galliano in the whipped cream. Yes. Yes, because that beautiful golden color. If y'all don't remember how pretty galliano is, it's just so pretty. That would look gorgeous And honestly, I actually like my hot cocoa with more of like a whipped cream, like the one you would put on an Irish coffee, where it's not super stiff peaks, more of a softer whipped cream. But I'm here for anything and everything. So please make a boozy hot chocolate. Please send me all your photos and let me live vicariously through your mugs. But this has been our sweater weather class. I'm hoping I can keep you libated. I don't think I'm using that properly, but boozed up and warm throughout this colder weather. Next week is our dysfunctional family bingo class, I believe. Yes. So we have some cocktails that will hopefully help you get through the holiday season. I know some people won't be able to go home, some people will. Libated. I like that. Y'all can't see the really great play on words. That's just for me, not for you guys. Sorry. But yes, the holidays can be very stressful just because there's a lot of personalities that come together. People grow in their time apart. And then when you bring them back together, sometimes it can be kind of contentious. So I thought we'd have a little fun, make some cocktails to get through any kind of difficult moment and name them after those. So we have, I believe, we'll be making cocktails such as unsolicited advice, and exit strategy, and grin and bear it. I think those were my choices. But if you were not participating in the giveaway and you would like those bingo cards, reach out to me. I'll tell you how to maybe get one if I feel forgiving. But I do hope y'all enjoyed this class. I do hope you recreate these cocktails, and I do hope you enjoy the holidays that are coming up. Let's try and find something good to be grateful for, because I know I'm very grateful for this format and the people that tune in, even though it may not be half of a world of people, but I really, really enjoy doing this. It keeps me sane. So please come back next Sunday, and I'll see you then. If you're not in the Zoom, I guess it sucks to suck. Bye.